The sterling silver clinked against china as Emma Chen carefully set her mother's best dinnerware on the mahogany dining table, each placement precise and deliberate. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded the cream-colored napkins into perfect triangles, a skill her mother had drilled into her since childhood. The aroma of her father's favorite braised pork belly wafted from the kitchen, mingling with the scent of jasmine rice and stir-fried bok choy. Everything had to be perfect tonight. David Miller stood in the doorway watching her, his tall frame casting a shadow across the polished hardwood floor of the Chen family's colonial home in Westport, Connecticut. His blue eyes held a mixture of encouragement and concern as Emma adjusted the centerpiece of white orchids for the third time. The engagement ring on her finger caught the light from the chandelier, sending tiny rainbows across the wall, a detail she hoped would catch her mother's eye at just the right moment. The sound of her father's BMW pulling into the driveway sent Emma's heart racing. Through the window, she watched her parents emerge from the car. Her father, Wei Chen, in his usual pressed khakis and polo shirt. Her mother, Linda, in a silk blouse that Emma had given her last Christmas. They moved with the synchronized precision of a couple married for 32 years, her mother automatically reaching for the grocery bags while her father grabbed his briefcase. Sarah arrived moments later, her nursing scrubs replaced with jeans and a sweater, her face showing the exhaustion of a 12-hour shift at Yale New Haven Hospital. At 26, she possessed the same delicate features as Emma, but carried herself with a casual confidence that had always come less naturally to her older sister. She squeezed Emma's hand as she passed, a silent gesture of support that meant everything. The family gathered around the table with the practiced ease of countless Sunday dinners, though tonight the usual warmth felt strained. Emma's mother served the dishes with efficient movements, commenting on the tenderness of the pork and asking David about his work at the investment firm. Her father discussed the latest developments in his engineering company, his accent still carrying traces of Taiwan, despite 3 decades in America. Emma waited until the plates were half empty, watching for the moment when her parents seemed most relaxed. David's hand found hers under the table, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. She cleared her throat softly, a sound that somehow managed to shift the entire atmosphere of the room. Her mother noticed the ring first, the chopsticks in Linda Chen's hand stilled midway to her mouth, a piece of bok choy suspended in air as her eyes fixed on the 2-carat diamond solitaire. The silence stretched like a rubber band pulled to its breaking point. Emma's carefully rehearsed words tumbled out in a rush, her voice bright with forced enthusiasm as she announced their engagement. Describing David's proposal at the lighthouse in Mystic, the wedding they planned for next spring, their hopes for the future. She spoke of the venue they had already visited, the Victorian mansion overlooking Long Island Sound, the cherry blossoms that would be in bloom. Her father's face transformed slowly, the initial surprise hardening into something Emma had rarely seen directed at her. Disappointment mixed with something deeper, more fundamental. He set down his chopsticks with deliberate precision, the soft click against the porcelain somehow louder than a shout. Linda Chen's reaction was more immediate and visceral. Her hand flew to her chest, her breathing becoming shallow as if Emma had announced a terminal diagnosis rather than an engagement. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking suddenly older, the carefully applied makeup unable to hide the shock. The words that followed felt like physical blows to Emma's chest. Her mother's voice, usually melodious and warm, turned sharp as she spoke about tradition, about the proper order of things, about how the eldest daughter could not, must not, marry before the younger. She invoked ancestors Emma had never met, customs from a homeland she had visited only twice, expectations that seemed to materialize from thin air like specters at the dinner table. Wei Chen's contribution was quieter, but no less devastating. He spoke of shame, of how they could not face their friends at the community center, their relatives who would whisper and judge. He mentioned cousin Mei Ling in California, whose family had been ostracized for a similar transgression, as if Emma's happiness was somehow equivalent to a crime. Emma felt the room spinning slightly, her carefully constructed vision of her wedding day crumbling like wet sand. She tried to reason with them, her voice growing stronger as years of suppressed frustration began to surface. She reminded them of the scholarships she had turned down to attend a local college, staying close to help with Sarah's education. She spoke of the relationships she had ended because her parents disapproved, the promotions she had declined that would have required relocation. Sarah sat frozen throughout the exchange, her fork suspended halfway to her plate, her eyes darting between her parents and sister like a spectator at a tennis match where every volley drew blood. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, suggesting that perhaps traditions could evolve, that love should matter more than birth order. Linda Chen turned on her younger daughter with unexpected vehemence, accusing her of selfishness for not finding a husband sooner, for pursuing her career with such single-minded focus. The irony was not lost on Emma that her parents had pushed both daughters toward academic and professional success, only to weaponize it now against them. David remained remarkably composed throughout the confrontation, though Emma could feel the tension in his body, see the way his jaw clenched when her father suggested that perhaps David didn't understand or respect Chinese culture. He spoke only once, his voice calm and measured, expressing his deep love for Emma and his willingness to honor any traditions that brought families together rather than tore them apart. The conversation deteriorated further when Emma's mother brought up the extended family in Taiwan and China, people Emma had met perhaps twice in her life, but who apparently held veto power over her happiness. Linda painted a picture of social exile, of whispered conversations at Lunar New Year gatherings, of lost face that could never be recovered. Emma felt something break inside her as her mother described the wedding she would not attend, the grandchildren she would not acknowledge, the future family gatherings that would be forever tainted. Tears finally came, hot and angry, as Emma realized her parents were choosing their reputation over their daughter's happiness. Sarah attempted to mediate, suggesting compromises that grew increasingly desperate. Perhaps she could get engaged first, even without a boyfriend. Maybe they could have a long engagement, giving her time to find someone. Each suggestion was shot down by their parents with increasing firmness. The dining room that had hosted countless family celebrations now felt like a courtroom where Emma stood accused of the crime of falling in love at the wrong time. The orchids in the centerpiece seemed to wilt under the weight of the conflict, their white petals taking on a funereal quality. Wei Chen's final pronouncement came with the authority of a man who had never been challenged in his own home. He would not walk Emma down the aisle, He would not contribute financially to the wedding. He and Linda would not attend unless Sarah was married first or at least engaged. The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. Emma stood slowly, her legs unsteady, David rising immediately to support her. She looked at her parents, searching their faces for any sign of the people who had cheered at her college graduation, who had cried with joy when she got her first job, who had once told her that her happiness was their greatest wish. Those people seemed to have vanished, replaced by strangers wearing familiar faces. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's quiet sobs provided the only soundtrack as Emma gathered her purse, her coat, her dignity. David's hand on her back was the only thing keeping her upright as they moved toward the door. Linda Chen's voice followed them, switching to Mandarin, the language she used when English failed to convey the depth of her emotion. The words were about duty, about honor, about the weight of being the eldest daughter. Emma understood every word, but felt them bounce off her like rain on glass. At the door, Emma turned back one last time. Sarah stood in the hallway, tears streaming down her face, mouthing an apology that Emma knew wasn't hers to give. Their parents remained at the table, their backs rigid, their decision final. The cool Connecticut evening air hit Emma's face as she stepped outside, the spring breeze carrying the scent of blooming dogwood from the garden her mother tended with such care. The same garden where Emma had played as a child, where she had helped plant roses for her sister's birthday, where family photos had been taken every Easter. David opened the car door for her, his movements gentle and deliberate. As they pulled away from the house, Emma watched it recede in the side mirror, the warm lights in the windows making it look like a dollhouse, perfect and untouchable. She wondered if she would ever enter it again, as a daughter rather than a stranger. The drive to their apartment in Stamford passed in silence, David's hand holding hers across the center console. Emma stared at her engagement ring, the diamond that had brought her such joy just hours ago, now feeling heavy on her finger. She thought about the wedding dress shopping trips she had imagined with her mother, the father-daughter dance she had already chosen the song for, the traditions she had hoped to blend with David's family customs. As they pulled into their building's garage, David finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion. He told her they would create their own traditions, that his parents would embrace her completely, that love would be enough. Emma wanted to believe him, needed to believe him, but the echo of her parents' rejection drowned out everything else. That night, as Emma lay awake staring at the ceiling, she replayed the dinner in her mind, searching for the moment when she could have said something different, done something to change the outcome. But each replay ended the same way, with her parents choosing tradition over their daughter, with Sarah caught in an impossible position, with Emma facing a wedding day that would forever carry the shadow of this rejection. The last thing she remembered before finally drifting into an exhausted sleep was David whispering that he loved her, that they would face this together, that sometimes the families we choose become more real than the ones we're born into. She held on to those words like a lifeline, even as her heart broke for the parents who had just chosen to lose her. The bridal boutique on Greenwich Avenue hummed with the excited chatter of brides-to-be and their entourages. But Emma Chen stood alone before the three-way mirror, her reflection multiplied into a trinity of solitude. The sales associate, a woman named Patricia with perfectly coiffed silver hair, bustled around her with practiced efficiency, adjusting the train of an ivory silk gown that cost more than Emma wanted to think about. Where other brides had mothers wiping tears and offering opinions, Emma had only the echo of silence. 3 months had passed since that devastating dinner, and the void left by her parents' absence had become a constant ache, like a tooth that throbbed with every heartbeat. The dress, objectively beautiful, with its delicate beadwork and elegant A-line silhouette, felt somehow incomplete without her mother's approval or criticism. Even Linda Chen's tendency to find fault would have been preferable to this emptiness. The bell above the boutique door chimed, and Margaret Miller swept in like a ray of sunshine breaking through storm clouds. David's mother carried herself with the grace of someone who had spent decades hosting charity galas and judicial dinners, her warm brown eyes immediately finding Emma's in the mirror. She approached slowly, as if approaching a wounded bird, her smile gentle and understanding. Margaret had been trying to fill the maternal void for weeks now, showing up to appointments with the florist, the caterer, the venue coordinator. She never pushed too hard, never tried to replace Linda Chen, but simply offered her presence like a gift with no strings attached. Today, she carried a small velvet box that she set aside before circling Emma slowly, taking in every detail of the dress. The older woman's eyes misted as she declared the gown absolutely perfect, her voice carrying the authority of someone whose opinion mattered. She spoke about how David would be speechless, how the dress complemented Emma's delicate features, how the train would look magnificent in the mansion's ballroom. Each compliment was a small bandage on Emma's wounded heart. Patricia discreetly retreated to give them privacy as Margaret opened the velvet box, revealing an antique pearl necklace that had belonged to David's grandmother. The pearls gleamed with the lustrous patina of age and care, each one perfectly matched, the clasp adorned with tiny diamonds. Margaret's hands trembled slightly as she fastened it around Emma's neck, the gesture so maternal that Emma had to bite her lip to keep from crying. The story Margaret told about the necklace, about David's grandmother who had worn it at her own wedding in 1952, who had passed it down with the instruction that it go to the woman who captured her grandson's heart completely, filled the boutique with a different kind of tradition. Not one of rigid rules and birth order, but of love passed down through generations like a torch. Outside the boutique, the Connecticut autumn was beginning to paint the trees in shades of gold and crimson. Emma and Margaret walked slowly toward the cafe where they had planned to meet Robert Miller for lunch. The retired judge had insisted on being involved in the wedding planning, a gesture that had surprised and touched Emma deeply. Robert Miller commanded attention even in retirement, his silver hair and distinguished bearing making him look like a man who had spent his life making important decisions. But when he saw Emma, his stern features softened into the expression of a father seeing his daughter. He stood as they approached, pulling out Emma's chair with old-fashioned courtesy. Over seafood salads and white wine, Robert listened as Emma discussed the latest wedding preparations, his keen eyes noting every moment her voice caught, every time her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. He had spent decades reading people in his courtroom, and Emma's pain was written in every gesture, every carefully chosen word that avoided mentioning her parents. The conversation turned to the ceremony logistics, and Robert gently inquired about who would walk Emma down the aisle. The question hung in the air like a sword suspended by a thread. Emma's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly as she explained she would walk alone, that it was fine, that plenty of modern brides did it. The words rang hollow even to her own ears. Robert exchanged a meaningful glance with his wife, an entire conversation passing between them in seconds. He reached across the table to pat Emma's hand, his touch gentle but firm, promising without words that she would not face that aisle alone. The weight of his unspoken commitment settled around Emma like a protective cloak. Later that afternoon, Emma met Sarah at a coffee shop in Westport, one of their old haunts from high school. Sarah looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, telling the story of sleepless nights and family tension. She had been living in the crossfire for 3 months, bearing their parents' disappointment and anger, while secretly helping Emma with wedding preparations. Sarah pulled out her phone, showing Emma pictures she had taken of potential bridesmaid dresses, her excitement genuine despite the circumstances. She had been researching colors that would complement the autumn theme, had even created a Pinterest board that she could only access from her phone, afraid their mother might see it on the family computer. The subterfuge required for Sarah to support her sister's wedding felt like something out of a spy novel. The conversation inevitably turned to their parents, and Sarah's face crumpled as she described the atmosphere at home. Their mother had removed all of Emma's photos from the mantel, storing them in boxes as if Emma had died rather than gotten engaged. Their father had forbidden mention of the wedding, changing the channel if wedding-related commercials appeared on television. Even worse was the campaign their parents had launched within their social circle. Linda Chen had been making the rounds at the community center, the Asian grocery store, the weekend Chinese school where she volunteered, painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter who had abandoned tradition. She spoke of Emma as if she were a cautionary tale, a warning to other parents about the dangers of raising children in America. The whispers had reached Emma through various channels, each one a fresh wound. Mrs. Liu from the community center had approached Emma at the grocery store, her expression a mixture of pity and judgment, offering unsolicited advice about honoring one's parents. Mr. Zhang had called David's office, suggesting that a respectful son-in-law would convince his bride to wait. The community pressure was relentless, 1,000 tiny cuts designed to bring Emma back in line. Sarah revealed that she had tried to defend Emma, to explain that love shouldn't follow a timeline, but their parents had turned on her with increasing venom. They blamed her for not trying harder to find a husband, accused her of being too picky, too focused on her career. The irony that they had pushed both daughters toward professional success only to weaponize it against them was not lost on either sister. The venue coordinator at the Branford House called while they were talking, confirming details about the ceremony space. Emma put her on speaker so Sarah could hear the description of how the autumn flowers would be arranged, how the sunset would align perfectly with the windows during the reception. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she realized she might be the only member of Emma's birth family to witness these carefully planned moments. David's parents had attempted to bridge the divide multiple times over the past months. Margaret had sent a handwritten invitation to dinner, her elegant script expressing how much they would love to meet Emma's parents properly. The invitation had been returned unopened. Robert had even driven to Wei Chen's engineering firm, hoping a man-to-man conversation might help, only to be told that Mr. Chen was unavailable indefinitely. The engagement party the Millers hosted at their country club had been beautiful but bittersweet. The Chen family's absence was a palpable presence, an empty space that no amount of flowers or champagne could fill. David's extended family had embraced Emma warmly, but she could see the questions in their eyes, the polite confusion about why her family wasn't there. Emma had crafted careful explanations about her parents traveling, being unable to make it, having prior commitments. Each lie burned her throat like acid, but the truth seemed worse somehow, an admission that her own parents had rejected her for choosing love. David's aunt from Boston had pulled her aside, whispering that family complications were normal, that everything would work out, her kindness making Emma excuse herself to cry in the bathroom. The wedding preparations continued with a strange duality, moments of joy interrupted by sharp pangs of loss. Choosing flowers without her mother's input felt like navigating without a compass, even though Linda Chen would have undoubtedly criticized every choice. Selecting music for the reception meant acknowledging there would be no mother-son dance to balance the father-daughter dance that wouldn't happen. Robert Miller had been observing everything with the quiet intensity of a man formulating a closing argument. He attended more wedding planning sessions than most grooms, let alone fathers of the groom. He watched Emma maintain her composure when the photographer asked about family portrait arrangements. He noticed how her hands trembled when she signed contracts that had only one set of parents' names. During a private moment at the venue, while Emma was discussing table arrangements with the coordinator, Robert stood at the window overlooking the Sound. The October light painted the water gold and silver, and he thought about justice, about family, about the different kinds of courage he had witnessed in his courtroom over the years. Emma's quiet strength in the face of her parents' cruelty struck him as one of the bravest things he had ever seen. The plan forming in Robert's mind was taking shape like a legal brief, each element carefully considered. He had presided over countless family disputes, had seen parents and children torn apart by pride, tradition, misunderstanding. But he had also seen the power of grand gestures, of unexpected grace, of someone stepping forward to bridge an impossible divide. Margaret found him there, slipping her hand into his as they watched Emma through the window. She was laughing at something the coordinator had said, but the sadness never quite left her eyes. Margaret whispered that Emma reminded her of their own daughter, living now in California, how she couldn't imagine missing any important moment in her life. Robert squeezed her hand, his decision crystallizing. The next few weeks brought a flurry of final preparations. Sarah managed to sneak away for the final dress fitting, tears streaming down her face as she saw Emma in the complete ensemble. She took photos on her phone, knowing she could never show them to their parents, but needing to document her sister's beauty. The two sisters held each other in the dressing room, Sarah whispering apologies for their parents, for the situation, for not being able to fix everything. Emma's co-workers threw her a surprise bridal shower, their kindness a balm to her wounded spirit. Her boss, who had become something of a mentor, pulled her aside to say that the family we choose is often stronger than the family we're born into. The words were meant to comfort, but they also acknowledged the profound loss Emma was experiencing. 2 weeks before the wedding, Emma made one final attempt to reach her parents. She drove to their house on a Sunday afternoon, knowing they would be home. She sat in her car for 20 minutes, gathering courage, watching her father tend to the lawn with the same meticulous care he had always shown. Her mother's silhouette moved past the kitchen window, probably preparing dinner. When Emma rang the doorbell, it was her father who answered. For a moment, She saw a flicker of something in his eyes, perhaps love, perhaps regret. But it was quickly replaced by stern resolve. He told her nothing had changed, that she knew what she needed to do. The door closed with a quiet finality that echoed louder than any slam. Emma sat in her car crying for an hour, grieving not just the loss of her parents' support, but the realization that they were choosing their pride over their daughter. She thought about all the sacrifices she had made over the years, always trying to be the perfect daughter, and how none of it had mattered in the end. The price of their love had become too high to pay. David found her there, having tracked her phone when she didn't come home. He held her in the car as the sun set, not offering platitudes or promises that everything would be okay. He simply shared her grief, understanding that some wounds don't heal. They just become part of who we are. As the wedding day approached, Robert Miller made his own preparations. He had his finest suit pressed, practiced words in front of the mirror, consulted with Margaret about his plan. He thought about Emma walking down that aisle alone, thought about the cruelty of parents who would let their daughter face such a moment without them. His resolve hardened like steel tempered in fire. The rehearsal dinner was held at a restaurant overlooking the harbor, the October evening crisp and clear. Emma gave a speech thanking the Millers for their love and support, her voice breaking only slightly when she mentioned how grateful she was to be joining their family. Robert watched her closely, seeing the brave face she wore like armor, recognizing the performance of strength that barely concealed her pain. That night, Sarah called Emma in tears. Their parents had told her that if she attended the wedding, she would be choosing Emma over them. The ultimatum was cruel in its simplicity, forcing Sarah to decide between her sister and her parents. Emma told her sister she would understand either choice, that she loved her no matter what. But when Sarah said she would be there, that she would stand as maid of honor, regardless of the consequences, Emma sobbed with relief and gratitude. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, one of those perfect New England autumn days that seemed painted by an artist's brush. Emma stood at the window of the bridal suite, watching guests arrive, searching despite herself for familiar faces that she knew wouldn't come. Or would they? Sarah had whispered that their parents had been arguing, that something had shifted. But Emma couldn't afford to hope. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of the bridal suite at the Branford house, casting delicate patterns across the hardwood floor where Emma Chen's wedding dress hung like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. The ivory silk seemed to glow in the light, each bead catching and reflecting tiny rainbows that danced across the walls. Emma stood at the window in her white satin robe, watching the event staff arrange chairs in perfect rows on the lawn below, each movement precise and purposeful, preparing for a celebration that would be forever marked by absence. Her bridesmaids bustled around her like butterflies in their autumn-colored dresses, shades of burgundy and gold that complemented the season's natural palette. The room hummed with nervous energy, hairspray and perfume mingling in the air, the sound of zippers and rustling fabric, creating a symphony of preparation. Sarah moved through it all with determined efficiency, her eyes red-rimmed but dry, having made her choice and bearing its weight with the quiet strength that ran in the Chen family. The makeup artist worked on Emma's face with gentle strokes, transforming her features into something ethereal, while Emma stared at her reflection without really seeing it. She was searching for something in her own eyes. Perhaps the little girl who had once played wedding with her mother's white tablecloth as a veil. Or the young woman who had dreamed of this day with her parents beaming in the front row. Instead, she found only a bride preparing to walk alone, carrying her joy and sorrow in equal measure. Sarah approached with the pearl necklace Margaret Miller had given Emma, her hands trembling slightly as she fastened the clasp. The sisters' eyes met in the mirror, an entire conversation passing silently between them about choices and consequences, about love and duty, about the price of happiness. Sarah whispered that she had driven past their parents' house that morning, had seen their father adjusting his tie in the window, their mother holding a garment bag. But she couldn't promise anything, couldn't offer hope that might shatter Emma's carefully constructed composure. The photographer captured moments that would later seem prophetic in their poignancy. Emma helping her youngest bridesmaid with her flower crown, Sarah fixing the train of the dress with meticulous care, Margaret Miller arriving with tears already threatening her carefully applied mascara. Each image would tell a story of a bride surrounded by love, yet achingly incomplete, like a painting with a corner left deliberately unfinished. As the hour approached, Emma heard the string quartet beginning their warm-up on the lawn below, the notes of Pachelbel's canon floating up through the open window. Her stomach clenched with a mixture of anticipation and dread, knowing that soon she would stand at the top of the aisle, alone, every eye upon her as she made that long walk toward David. She had practiced it in her mind 100 times, keeping her head high, her smile steady, pretending that walking alone was a choice rather than a consequence. The wedding coordinator knocked softly, announcing it was time for the bridesmaids to line up. The room erupted in a flurry of last-minute adjustments, lipstick touch-ups, and whispered encouragements. Sarah lingered, squeezing Emma's hand one final time before joining the processional line, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts and the weight of tradition broken. Through the window, Emma could see the guests taking their seats, David's family filling the groom's side with warmth and anticipation. The bride's side was respectably full, populated by friends and colleagues, but the absence of extended family was noticeable to anyone who understood traditional wedding dynamics. And then, in the very back row, she saw them. Her parents sat rigidly in the last row on the bride's side, as far from the altar as possible, while still technically being present. Her mother wore a black dress, as if attending a funeral rather than a wedding, her face set in lines of disapproval. Her father stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable, his hands folded in his lap like a man in a waiting room, rather than at his daughter's wedding. They had come, but their presence felt more like judgment than support. Emma's knees nearly buckled at the sight of them, a tsunami of emotions crashing over her. Hope, anger, sadness, and a desperate wish that their presence meant forgiveness. But their position in the back row, their formal distance, told a different story. They had come to witness, not to participate. They had come to fulfill some minimal obligation, not to celebrate. The wedding coordinator returned, her bright smile faltering slightly when she saw Emma's expression. She gently reminded Emma that the music was about to begin, that it was time to take her position. Emma nodded, squaring her shoulders, preparing to face this moment she had dreaded for months. Then came the knock at the door. Not the coordinator's polite tap, but a firm, decisive sound that commanded attention. Before Emma could respond, the door opened, and Robert Miller stood in the doorway, resplendent in his finest charcoal suit, a white rose boutonniere pinned to his lapel. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his shoes polished to a mirror shine, every detail speaking of a man who had prepared for this moment with the same care he had once prepared for his most important cases. The retired judge's eyes held a mixture of determination and tenderness as he entered the room, closing the door behind him with quiet authority. He stood before Emma, his tall frame somehow both imposing and comforting, like a lighthouse in a storm. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of what was about to happen settling between them like a sacred contract. Robert's voice, when he finally spoke, carried the resonance of decades spent commanding courtrooms, yet it was soft with emotion. He told Emma that he had been honored to preside over many ceremonies in his career, had witnessed countless moments where justice and mercy intersected, but that none had moved him more than watching her navigate these past months with such grace. He spoke of family not as an accident of birth, but as a choice of the heart, of love that transcends bloodlines and traditions. His words painted a picture of the months he had watched her, seeing not just his son's fiancée, but a daughter he would be proud to claim. He spoke of her strength in the face of rejection, her dignity when confronted with impossible choices, her commitment to love despite its cost. Each word was carefully chosen, delivered with the precision of a man who understood the power of language to heal or harm. Then, with a formality that somehow made the moment more profound, Robert Miller asked Emma for the honor of walking her down the aisle. He acknowledged that he could never replace her father, would never try to, but offered himself as someone who recognized her worth, who saw her value, who would be proud to stand beside her on this momentous day. His request was both humble and magnificent, a gesture that redefined what family could mean. Emma's carefully maintained composure finally shattered, tears streaming down her face as the full weight of Robert's offer washed over her. This man, who owed her nothing, was offering everything her own father had withheld. This judge, who had spent his life weighing evidence and determining justice, was choosing to stand where tradition said he didn't belong, simply because it was right. Through her tears, Emma managed to nod, then found her voice to accept his offer with profound gratitude. Robert produced a handkerchief from his pocket, an old-fashioned gesture that somehow perfectly suited the moment, gently dabbing at her tears while the makeup artist rushed to repair any damage. He waited patiently as Emma composed herself, offering his arm only when she was ready. The walk to the ceremony site seemed both endless and too brief. Robert's presence beside her transformed what would have been a walk of solitude into something triumphant. The guests turned as the music changed, their faces registering surprise, understanding, and in many cases, tears at the sight of Robert Miller escorting Emma with all the pride of a father. As they reached the back row where Emma's parents sat, Robert did something unexpected. He paused, his movement so deliberate that the entire assembly seemed to hold its breath. He turned slightly toward Wei and Linda Chen, his expression neither condemning nor pleading, but simply present, acknowledging them with the dignity they had denied their daughter. His words, when they came, were delivered with the same measured authority he had once used to deliver verdicts. He spoke directly to them, his voice carrying clearly despite its gentle tone, saying that they were witnessing a privilege he was honored to accept, a role he would fulfill with joy, though he recognized it rightfully belonged to them. He told them their daughter was extraordinary, that any parent would be proud to claim her, that their absence from this moment was a loss that would echo through generations. The words were not cruel, but they were devastating in their truth. Robert spoke of the future grandchildren who would ask why their grandparents weren't in the wedding photos, of the anniversaries that would be celebrated without them, of the love they were choosing to forfeit for the sake of tradition. He painted a picture of regret that would grow heavier with each passing year, of opportunities lost that could never be reclaimed. Linda Chen's face crumbled as Robert spoke, her carefully maintained disapproval dissolving into something raw and painful. Wei Chen's rigid posture began to soften, his hands unclenching as the weight of Robert's words settled upon him like stones. They were seeing their choice reflected back to them through the eyes of a stranger who had stepped forward where they had stepped back. Robert concluded by saying that it was not too late, that love and forgiveness were always possible, that families could heal if pride could be set aside. Then, with infinite grace, he continued walking Emma down the aisle, leaving her parents to wrestle with the mirror he had held up to their hearts. The ceremony proceeded with a beauty that transcended the earlier pain. David's face, when he saw Emma, was a masterpiece of love and admiration, his eyes bright with unshed tears. The vows they exchanged carried extra weight, their promises to choose each other daily resonating with everyone who knew their story. When the officiant asked, "Who gave this woman to be married?" Robert's voice rang clear and proud as he answered, "Her chosen family does." Throughout the ceremony, Emma was aware of movement in the back row, of her parents shifting, whispering, her mother's quiet sobs becoming increasingly audible. But she kept her eyes on David, on their future, on the family they were creating in this moment. Sarah stood as maid of honor, with tears streaming down her face, no longer trying to hide them, her pride in her sister's courage evident to all. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss David and Emma shared was more than romantic. It was a seal on a new beginning, a declaration of independence from the past's pain. The recessional music began, joyful and triumphant, and as the newlyweds walked back down the aisle, Emma saw that her parents' seats were empty. Her heart sank for just a moment before she saw them standing at the entrance to the reception tent, her mother's face streaked with tears, her father's expression soft with something that looked like recognition. They stood uncertainly, as if unsure of their welcome, their earlier rigid certainty replaced by vulnerability. The reception was in full swing when Wei and Linda Chen finally approached their daughter. The band had just finished the father-daughter dance, where Robert Miller had stepped in, moving Emma around the floor with practiced ease while guests wiped away tears. The symbolism was lost on no one, least of all Emma's parents, who had watched from the edges of the celebration like ghosts at their own funeral. Linda Chen reached Emma first, her hands trembling as she touched her daughter's face, speaking in rapid Mandarin about forgiveness, about mistakes, about the blindness that tradition can bring. Wei Chen stood behind his wife, his engineer's precision crumbling as he struggled to find words for emotions he had spent months denying. When he finally spoke, it was to thank Robert Miller for showing him what he had almost lost, for being the father he had failed to be. Robert Miller, with the grace that had defined his entire approach to this situation, stepped forward to formally introduce himself to the Chens, extending his hand to Wei with genuine warmth. He spoke of second chances, of the courage it took to admit error, of how the greatest gift parents could give their children was the freedom to choose their own happiness. His words built a bridge that the Chens could cross if they chose to. The photographer, sensing the moment's importance, captured the scene as both sets of parents stood together for the first time, the earlier division healing like a wound finally allowed to close. Emma stood between them, still in her wedding dress, mascara slightly smudged from tears of joy and pain and reconciliation, all mixed together. Margaret Miller embraced Linda Chen, woman to woman, mother to mother, understanding passing between them that needed no translation. She spoke of how lucky they all were to have Emma in their lives, how families could expand rather than divide, how love multiplied when shared rather than diminished. Her warmth melted the last of Linda's resistance. As the evening progressed, the Chens gradually integrated into the celebration, their initial discomfort giving way to tentative participation. Wei Chen was seen deep in conversation with Robert Miller, two fathers finding common ground in their love for their children. Linda Chen helped Sarah adjust Emma's train for the cake cutting, a small gesture that spoke volumes about acceptance and involvement. The wedding that had begun with the specter of absence and rejection had transformed into something richer and more complex, a testament to the power of courage, both in those who step forward and those who find the strength to change course. Robert Miller's gesture had catalyzed something beyond a simple walk down the aisle. He had demonstrated that love could transcend tradition, that chosen family could teach biological family about the true meaning of support. As the night drew to a close, Emma found a quiet moment with Robert Miller on the terrace overlooking the Sound. The moon reflected on the water, and the sounds of the reception drifted out to them like music from a distant dream. She thanked him not just for walking her down the aisle, but for showing her parents the way back to her, for being the bridge that allowed them to cross their own divide. Robert's response was characteristic of the wisdom that had made him such an effective judge. He spoke of how justice wasn't always about punishment, but sometimes about restoration, how the greatest verdicts were the ones that healed rather than harmed. He told Emma that her courage in facing rejection had inspired his courage in stepping forward, that families were built on such mutual choices. The final dance of the evening brought all the parents onto the floor with the newlyweds, a sight that would have seemed impossible just hours earlier. The Chens moved tentatively at first, still finding their rhythm in this new reality, while the Millers provided steady support. It was a metaphor for the future they would all navigate together, imperfect but willing, traditional and modern intertwined. As guests departed, many commented on the extraordinary beauty of the ceremony, not just in its aesthetic details, but in its emotional journey. They had witnessed something rare, a family breaking apart and reforming in real time, tradition yielding to love, pride surrendering to connection. Robert Miller's intervention would become family legend, told at future gatherings as the moment when everything changed. Emma's parents lingered at the end, helping to gather gifts and flowers, small acts of service that were their way of beginning to make amends. Linda Chen carefully folded Emma's veil, handling it with the reverence of someone who finally understood what they had almost missed. Wei Chen shook David's hand with genuine warmth, welcoming him as the son-in-law he had nearly rejected. The wedding day that Emma had dreaded facing alone had become something neither she nor anyone else could have anticipated. It was a testament to the unexpected places from which grace can emerge, to the power of one person's courage to transform an entire family's story. Robert Miller had not simply walked Emma down the aisle. He had walked her entire family toward a future where love mattered more than tradition, where choosing each other daily was the only tradition worth preserving.